joining Texas, Arizona, Montana, and a couple other very conservative states. The governor did a big press conference earlier this week announcing the end to the pandemic unemployment insurance, the federal part of it, so the $300 a week. That will be expiring in the end of June. The reasoning, of course, is that we have a lot of job openings, and this incentive is creating, encouraging people to not go back in the mines and work. And so one thing, and I even hate to qualify it as good, one thing they did do in that announcement was they announced they're going to do $1,200 as an incentive pay. So you would get your entire month basically worth of extra unemployment insurance if you would go back and get a job. Comes with a lot of qualifications. I think they cap it at some number of tens of thousands of people that would qualify for it. And of course, you got to know about it to even sign up for it. So it's not like you just get it when you sign up for unemployment like this. So anyway, pretty ghoulish overall, because as one of our local reporters points out, Catherine Sweeney, this is one of those common knowledge things that doesn't hold up on inspection. Oklahoma's current unemployment rate is 4.2%. If you look at from 2011 to 2019, the average unemployment rate for May is 4.6%. So right now we have less unemployment, we just don't have enough people, or there's, everyone's got jobs who wants jobs is basically what it comes down to right now. So,
well, and also it's the building together, the patchworking of jobs is really something that is fundamental to Oklahomans' lives, especially people who are in lower incomes. I know that there were times where my mom worked 4 jobs, I worked 3 jobs. And so it's so hard to tell what the actual situation around employment and about living wages are when so many Oklahomans are putting together puzzle pieces to make an actual living wage.
Yeah. And my initial take on that was just, these folks writing the policy clearly haven't talked to a single person that's on unemployment, because the people, even if they're staying on it, it expires. It's temporary. You can't just live on unemployment. I mean, even the federal extra is only 26 weeks, I think. So it's not, which is, I guess, a long time, but in the scheme of a job loss and depending on what your industry is. I mean, if you're in the oil industry, jobs have been down in the oil industry for over a year. They cratered before the pandemic. They were on a nosedive down. So, these people getting extra money and surviving a little better. The narrative is so psychotic, so cruel.
Well, and
Ron,
I think
go ahead, Alan.
No, I was just going to say, I think part of that is because these lawmakers who are looking out for the shop owners and things like that, they look at these people as owners, as educated, as people who have done it themselves, and they look at the employees as someone who's probably less educated, who is freeloading, and they don't look at them with the same level of humanity that they look at these owners of businesses. It's so different. They're oh, we're going to listen to these people because these people know what they're talking about and have these goals that help society and blah, 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 blah. And they don't listen to these people who are unemployed, who are making below a living wage. And so they're not going back to work, whatever, because they think that there's a disconnect between those people, but they're the same level of human. They're the same level of trying to make ends meet. And so it's just ridiculous.
So a couple of things. Number one, COVID has so ravaged our society in ways that we cannot actually analyze in the moment adequately. So it's not as simple as the extra $300, people aren't going back to work. It's much more complex and nuanced as to what the labor shortage actually entails. But I'm sure there are certain people making the rational decision of, I'm making more money by unemployment, so I'm not going to go take a job. So the other issues from COVID of, one actual thing of labor shortages that isn't being addressed but could be addressed is actually childcare, right? There's still huge childcare issues.
Yeah.
But the issue of I'm making this extreme laws. I ain't going back to work. That's the most fixable fucking issue. Just pay them more, right? Welcome to Ron Jones's School of Economics, right? Like that is the simple solution to the issue that we're talking about in terms of the disincentive, quote unquote, to work. That can be fixed really easily by just simply raising the fucking minimum wage. So when we have these discussions about a labor shortage, when you actually have the discussions in reality, you'll find out things like childcare and a variety of other factors as to why there is this quote unquote labor shortage. But the element of I make more money sitting at home will let me pay you more money to leave your fucking home. That's the most fixable, right? That's the low-hanging fruit of this labor and economics issue is to simply pay them more. So is that what Oklahoma and Montana and all of these other states, is that what they decided to do? Good point. We'll just pay them like if they pay you more from the government, and I'm a governor of a state, kind of what's happening in Illinois with Pritzker, because he's not going to repeal it. In my mind, I'm like, well, we just came out of a pandemic. The people who are getting unemployment are people who are most likely to be really driving our economy because they're spending the money they get, right? They're not oil and gas oligarchs with lower capital gains taxes, right? These are people driving our economy. So either you pay them more or they'll keep driving our economy. And then when that runs out, they'll go back and work for you. But I'm not going to save you. And let's be frank, that's harming our economy to save a few business owners or whoever who just refuse to pay living wages. Because all of this is an economic engine for us. It's the same thing. And if you read Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl, you will see like Medicaid expansion not only just gives people health insurance, it's also an economic boom for many states, right? And they denied that, or really on the basis of racism. And they're denying this for a couple of their crony friends at the expense of not of all of us, right? Because it will cost the state in economic earnings and taxes and the things Oklahoma sorely needs, just so Kevin Stitt can have some inadequately paid, force people back into the mines for starvation wages, right? And so that is the core of this issue. It's cruelty. That's all it is. It's I'm going to take this thing from you that I'm not even giving to you that helps you feed your family because I'm cruel. Because these few people complaining about not being able to pay you starvation wages when they could just pay you more refuse to. And they're more important to me than you are as an Oklahoman, as a person.
Yeah. I popped up the executive director of Oklahoma Policy Institute gets an op-ed in the Journal Record and just pulled up their quote from it. You know, in Oklahoma, more than 1 in 4 jobs are considered low wage, more than minimum wage, but not sufficient enough to prosper. Even with Oklahoma's relatively low cost of living, it takes much more than minimum wage to achieve living beyond subsistence. I mean, when you factor in that like the unemployment was pegged at like a $15 an hour minimum wage, which is only $30,000 a year. So if your job was paying you more than that, you've been on unemployment, you've taken a pay cut. But I mean, it's like you want people to go back to making $10 an hour, $12 an hour. I mean, like, you know, it's such a bad argument. What another reaction I had to those people the other day at the press conference was, go ask these guys if they would take these jobs. Would you go work for $12.50 an hour? Would you go work for $13 an hour, 30 hours a week because you don't want to push them up high enough to have to pay for their health care? Like, you know, like all these jobs are, in many cases, are just scams. Like they know the kind of deal they're cutting, and they know people don't want to take it. So yeah, I mean, maybe they would take the incrementally better deal that unemployment is, but it's also like you could also just stop offering a shitty deal and they'd come take it.
Well, and I think there's also like there's two things. You know, Ron brought up how there's this childcare crisis too, and it is factually proven that more women have been displaced out of their jobs because of the pandemic than anyone else, because there's this childcare issue, and women are the ones who either self-select or are, you know, selected by society or their partners to take on that role of childcare. So as a mother, if you get taken out of your work environment and then you start to realize that you're paying almost more than half your salary, like 3/4 sometimes of your salary, to let someone else, be in this kind of parenting role. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to a job where I'm not making that money. I'm away from my kids. I'm letting them go into something that I don't understand. It's a very big pull, and it's a very complicated issue that stems from not having adequate care for the mothers of our and the parents, all the parents of our society. There used to be parental wages that the government gave out and stipends, because they understand that it is such a vital element to have kids that are raised, I don't want to say correctly, but have kids that are raised in a nurturing environment, and that's valued. And so it creates this gap. But it's also like, I feel, I've worked a shitty job for like $8.50 an hour, right? Like, I feel like I left a really good paying job because it was stressing me out. And I was like, I'm just going to work at Hallmark, and sell Christmas ornaments, and it was really interesting to me, but it was like, I got paid 25 cents more than the other people because I had a degree. It's like,
Wow, don't spend it all in one place.
I know. I was like, what is this even doing? But it was interesting because I had the availability to work 40 hours, but they wouldn't give it. And I was like, just give me 30. Like, I don't need benefits. I'm freeloading off my parents. But it's like, people know, instead of hiring, 5 solid candidates at a living wage, they'd rather hire like 15 and pay them nothing.
Right.
And I think that as a low wage worker at some point in my life and going through this pandemic, I think it's really hit people home that this isn't the loving boss that's like going to give you off for your child's ballerina, performance or anything like that. Like, you are being used, and when it's convenient for them, you are necessary, you are essential, but when it's not, then you're just the same piece of trash.